Today we have on the show the lovely Kiwi Ward, singer-songwriter and chef for me tonight with a steak, and her father, Bill Ward. Bill, of course, you were in the 4/4s.
Started off in the 4/4s.
So, of course, you had Morris Square at one. So the coffee lounge, because I hadn't actually heard of that place until, obviously doesn't exist now, I don't suppose.
No, it's long gone.
Long gone.
Yeah.
It needs to be reinvented.
It's where they're building all that huge big farmers building now.
Oh,
It was underneath that, and there was
okay.
there was
Just in
another
town.
lounge above that Trevor also
Okay.
opened up when he had the bigger events, and he
Yeah.
called it Club 54.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So
Now,
that's a while ago.
Of course, you guys co-wrote, you and another guy in the band co-wrote a song about.
Yeah,
I
about the
presume
coffee
that's what
lounge,
it's
yeah.
about. What influenced you to get into music when you were very young? Like, who were your heroes before you became an actual
Yeah,
musician in a band?
we always had music in the house. We had a piano. Dad could sing, Mum couldn't. But her brother, Uncle Stan, used to
Yeah.
come across before he was married and play the piano. We'd all sit around and sing songs.
Yeah.
And he also had a squeeze box, piano accordion, we call it squeeze box. And because we had a piano there, I'd ding dong 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 whatever. So Mum decided, oh, he might have some music and should have some piano lessons. So there was we lived up Belk Road, which is just about 8
Yep.
kilometres away.
Yep.
And there was a Mrs. Melville lived about a mile down the road, about this high, and a piano teacher. So Mum said, oh, do you want to take piano? I said, oh yeah, okay. So go down there, and I plucked around a little bit the first time, and yeah, it was quite good. And then she gave me some lessons to do, and typical boy, went home and went out, run around in the paddock instead of go back next time. Sort of got it, and a big ruler, she's trying to learn piano, and she's going to break all my fingers. So that happened twice. I went to 3 lessons altogether, and then one lesson day I'd just get my little music box and go down and climb over the neighbour's paddock and go chasing rabbits or whatever. Of course, Mum found out. Oh, that was the end of my musical career.
Yeah.
But she must have known that there was something there, because I still muck around on the piano even though I couldn't play it. And one Christmas I got a ukulele for Christmas, and
That was the
as
beginning.
soon as I got that, I was away basically.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
How old were you?
Oh, I was probably about 11, I suppose.
Yeah.
And down the track, I got a banjo ukulele, which is the same but
Yeah.
louder,
Yeah,
and that was good at parties. And then, like I
Yeah,
said
yeah.
before,
Yeah,
I got,
yeah,
got the guitar, and
yeah, yeah.
and I'm still learning, but love it.
Still
the guitar.
learning.
It's just got something.
He's 85. and
The thing is, they're so portable. You can take it anywhere and
Yeah.
sit out in the middle of nowhere. You don't need a laptop. You don't need power. You just need guitar. And I love
3
it.
chords
And
and
I've-
the truth.
Yeah, and I've got. I'm down from 24 to 16 at the moment.
Yeah.
And, when we were in England, of course, I had still got it. I had a 1964 Stratocaster that I was born here, bought here. Collector's item now. It's probably worth over 20,000.
Yeah.
Platinum plate would be worth about another 100 to that. But I also had a nice 12-string Rickenbacker guitar, and I loved the sound of the Rickenbacker. And we used to do a few of the Birds tunes, nice ringy,
Yeah.
and it was forever changing guitars, and it didn't really work. And so I ended up. Wasn't the first guitar I built. I built a couple here before we went in,
Yeah.
but I built a twin neck guitar. And it was early in the scene and we couldn't afford a case, so I built it so it fit in the original case, and I splayed the necks, and I've given it to my son. You flick a switch and you got the lovely 12-string sound, flick another switch and you get the 6-string sound. And people like Led Zeppelin used them, the big clumsy
I know the ones.
bloody
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
And before I built mine, I tried one of those, and Dane Electro used to do
Yeah.
one there. And they were the same big, clumsy, heavy bloody things, and mine's the same size body as a Stratocaster, 2 necks, and they splay out so you can get at
Wow.
them easy enough.
Yeah.
That's
And,
cool.
and it's a cool guitar. It's a
Didn't
bloody
it
neat
get
guitar.
stolen at one point?
Pardon?
Didn't it get stolen?
Yeah, I lent it to Gary, my son, and it got stolen. It was down in Wakatani, and they must have realised it was so bloody rare, because it's the only one like it I've ever seen,
Jeez.
that it was found behind the music shop. I think he took it into the music shop to get the guy to see if the guy wanted to buy it off him, and the guy knew or something.
Yeah.
This is unusual, and he said, "Oh, leave it with me," and something like that.
We were very lucky.
And it was
to get
found
that.
very lucky to get it back,
Yeah.
but it's the only one like it in the world. I did make a copy, but I made it slightly different, so it's not identical.
Wow,
But the
that's
original
pretty
one is the original one.
You love cars, and you've got a beautiful red car out there.
Yeah.
That's all I know. It's red.
It's a Mustang.
It's a Mustang. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. Take a look at this. This is the red Mustang. Is this something that you've purchased recently?
Very recently, yeah.
Yep.
I came into some money
Oh, that's good.
through a
Oh.
situation that I wouldn't have wanted, but
No.
I had a
Okay.
bit of money, and I thought my old Falcon was getting a little bit tired and scratchy, so I thought I'll buy this Mustang, and I love it. And
How fast have you been in it?
I've been over 100 mile an hour in it.
He's out in it every
Wow.
Once or
single day.
twice.
Oh, just whip out and grab some milk.
Do the
Oh,
dogs
just
go in
whip out and grab another bottle of milk.
it? Are the dogs allowed in?
My
His
dog is in
is,
it, yes,
yeah.
yes, and
She
she
goes
is.
with him.
She's a special way of getting in, and I wipe the back seat down now and again, particularly if it's been wet. But no, it's just a car, but
Yeah.
it's quite special. I love it.
Because you love cars.
I love cars,
Yeah,
yeah.
because you were
Driving.
involved in a world record with a car.
Well,
So
yeah.
you tell us about that, when that happened and what happened.
Yeah, well, it was quite interesting. When we were coming back from England in the band, I wanted something to read, and I bought an American Hot Rod magazine to read on the plane, and in it was an article about Bert Munro, who we've all know, New Zealander from Invercargill again. Set a world record in 1968, no, 1967.
Yep.
And I'm reading this, and I'm like, New Zealand, and of course I'd always loved cars, and that probably planted a seed.
Yeah.
And then we get home, and I'm not long home, and my brother come around to me, and the car shed of the house we were renting was a terrible thing to get into. He said,
Yep.
"Can I use your shed? I want to build a hot
Yeah.
rod." Okay. So he wouldn't let me in the shed until he actually drove it out of the
Yeah.
shed about 8 months later. Things transpired, and I built a hot rod, and I built another one. And,
Yeah.
and the vulnerable thing with Bert Munro setting a record there was obviously it planted a seed, and I thought, gee, we need to go over there just to have a look. Wouldn't we need to actually have a car and drive down? Wouldn't we need to take my own car? You know? So one thing led to another, and in 1979, in a 5-month period, me and one friend of mine, and with a couple of other helpers, not many, built a car and took it to the Bonneville Salt Flats and went the fastest in our class. It was a little 1930 Model A fiberglass roadster with a Chevy engine in it, and we went 171.395 miles an hour. We didn't get a record because on our return run, the first return run, the throttle cable fell off. And if I'd stayed on course and unhooked myself and hooked it back on, we could have gone. And on the second run, it was the last chance. I got that excited, I nailed it too hard and skidded and spun her out. But we still went the fastest in our class.
Right.
So then things like family,
Yeah.
cutting your hair, getting a real job, and all that.
I did get to go the second time.
Yeah, you went the second time, yeah.
I was on
The second time we went was in 82. First time we went was 79. 82 we went, it was rained out. The salt flats were flooded.
Yeah.
In 84 we went back, we'd stored the car there for a year and went back, and it was very slippery. And it was interesting because we'd been sponsored some beer by Steinlager. We'd approached a lot of people for sponsorship, and they didn't give us any money, but they gave us 4 cartons of the big bottles of beer. And we thought, right, at the end of the week we're going to have a Kiwi barbecue and invite all the friends who've helped us on the, to have a barbecue. It rained on the Thursday and they closed the flats down and we had to drink it ourselves.
Oh.
Oh, damn.
It took us a couple of days. Family, money, surviving, got a real job. And when I heard, in 1979 when we were on the Salt, Roger Donaldson and the guy Muir approached us time, we were waiting in line to have a run. And so I knew Ian Mune because I'd gone to school with him here 1 year in Tauranga. And anyway, they come up because they were Kiwis and they said, "Oh, you guys Kiwis, yeah. Oh, what are you doing? Yeah, what are you fellas doing here?" And, "Oh, we're going to make a movie called The World's Fastest Indian." And I thought, "Oh, is that about Bert Munro?" Because Bert Munro wasn't well known in New Zealand at the time. He was better known over there, quite well known down south because that's where he came from. And they were quite surprised that I knew about Bert, but I'd read about him, come back from England, and I'd researched him quite a bit here. And of course, time went by and I thought, oh, what a shame that the movie's never going to be made. In about 2004, hello, the world's first Indian movie's being made, and I got an invite to the premiere down in Ricardo.
Wow.
And then my brother went down, and that planted the cells.
Yeah.
Got to go back. Before that, I'd got to know John Britton with the motorbike fame, and I'd had the idea of going back before the movie thing came. I'd even started building a little car, and I met up with John down at Masterton, and lovely guy. And I said, oh, I'm thinking of building a little car. Wonder if we could, do something and borrow one of your engines and put it in. He said, that's fine. He said, yeah, I'd love to be involved. And I said, oh, okay, yeah, good. What do we do about tuning it? He says, I'll send a guy with you, and he'll just tickle it up and turn a knob on the dashboard. And sadly then, John got sick and died.
Oh.
And his whole project, of which he was a mastermind at, got shelved. The bean council, it's not making any money, close it down. Damn shame, because they had probably one of the best research and development teams as far as motorbikes went in the world at the time. And they even had been contacted by Indian motorbikes, which were getting researched to do stuff with them. But anyway, the bean council shut it down. So the car was sitting there. And then when the movie came out, and I got invited to I'd written a book about the first trip, called 3 Times in a Row. And when the movie came out, I got in touch with a friend of mine, and we got the book privately published.
Yeah.
And I went to a hopper thing in Auckland, and I think I had 1,000 copies, and we sold 700 copies that day. Come back, pockets bulging with money. And I thought, I've got to do something with this money rather than just spend it, So I thought, going back to the salt. So revived the original frame we'd made for the engine we were going to do with John Britton, widened it, got a body, and a friend of mine said, oh, I'll build you a motor if you want, put it in the back. And away we went. And so we had 2 years of huge amount of help on the internet, because we started a blog spot, and we got so much help. And we're at a New Year's Eve party down in Wakatani, and a friend of mine who lives not far away, actually, Pete Gerald, we're talking about, I should start a supporters club perhaps, Because for $100 each, they could join the club, get a t-shirt, membership card, and get the name on the trunk of the car.
Yep.
And we got 291,
Wow.
which is just mind-blowing, eh?
Yeah.
And of course, all in the meantime, we're building the car and putting the names on the trunk, and they're still on the trunk of the car. And in fact, they own the car, we just look after it for them. And then we went over, and the icing on the cake, we actually set a record and held it for 8 years.
Do you still hold that record?
No, it's gone now.
How long did you hold it for?
8 years.
Oh,
We
wow.
set it in
That's
2008, and we
good.
held it till
Did
2016.
you get a trophy?
Yeah, I've got the trophy. It's in storage at the moment. It hasn't got a radiator because it's rear engine and there's nowhere to put a radiator, so we use a cooling system like they used in boats with a heat exchanger. We had big water tanks and go through this thing.
That's
And we got sponsored 3 radiators, but we couldn't use them because we didn't have a radiator. And it was pretty special, And we started. One of the girls decided, let's do a calendar. Calendar Girls. Remember that movie, the English movie where the guy had. I'll give you a copy of it. I've got some. I haven't got them here, but I'll.
September now.
It's like yours, like come
Yeah. They said, let's do a Calendar Girls thing, like they did in England for some woman's husband who had cancer and couldn't get money for the treatment.
Yeah.
So we did a Calendar Girls thing, and ended up 56 women got their gear off and took pictures for each month of the year.
We covered ourselves. Oh,
It was all the best
we got
possible tape.
tattoos.
Oh my goodness.
Was that the squirrel?
Yeah, that's
And he made me, and I went to get tattoos as well. Yeah, that was all for fundraising.
Yes, it was like the sun. It was a cold winter's night.
I had a
And a
guitar
friend of mine-
covering me just.
Yeah, everybody was in the best possible taste.
Oh, yeah.
It was a cold winter's night, and a friend of mine had done an airbrush drawing of the Bonneville salt flats, and it was about bloody June, frosty outside. And I thought, well, I've got to get my gear off for the ladies, so I got my gear off for the ladies. So there's not many people can say though that the 56 women have got the gear off for them. But the funniest thing was, we'd run into at events afterwards. It's so nice to see you with your clothes on. And they'd laugh because it was so much fun. And we still got a few of those calendars, and I'll
I
make
cannot
sure.
hear one.
There's one in my office actually.
That would be cool. Yeah.
So that was it was pretty special, eh? We got so much help. It was humbling,
Yeah.
Because I'm nothing special. I'm just somebody likes to play guitar,
Oh,
and he just
he
likes
is
cars.
someone
And I
special,
happened to be
Yeah.
the first Kiwi to race a car on the Salt Flats, and not the first one to set a record because other guys went in between. But
Yeah.
but no, it was a pretty special time,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
I've been pretty lucky when I think about it.
Yeah.
You know, like going to England with the band, and
Oh, totally.
even the band here before Winting was pretty cool. And then to do the Bonneville thing as well, and then still be doing the band thing, it just keeps me alive.
Yeah.
They have such a lovely family.
Yeah, oh, well,
Yeah.
that's the big thing.
Yeah, we've got a
yeah.
good little,
Yeah.
good
Yeah.
little family, eh?
Yeah, the family and the music have saved
Yeah.
me.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Yeah. And of course, you've got some interesting plans for the future that you were thinking about doing.
Well, I've got a tiny house coming tomorrow
Oh
morning.
yes, that's right.
There'll be a housewarming, and I got
Mm.
3 bottles of Jim Beam for Christmas, which I've been saving for the opening. So you might have to come out and help.
I will.
Yes, do
Yeah.
come.
We'll have
Yeah.
an afternoon thing
Okay.
because it'll probably be cold at nights,
Mm.
but we'll.
We've
Yeah.
got a few
Yeah.
little fire things
Yeah.
to light out there.
And you've got another plan regarding books, book writing.
Well, yeah, I've been. There's a guy called Tim Hanna. He's written
Yeah.
a couple of books. He wrote books about Burt Munro, about Garth Hogan,
Yeah.
another good friend of mine. Been in touch with him quite recently, and he said, "Well, I've read your first book," and he said, "I read it all, so it must have been all right."
Mm.
So he says, "Come down sometime, bring all your other stuff down, and we'll see." You know, so it might never happen, but the thing is, everybody's got a story.
I believe the same
And-
thing.
Everybody's got
Yes,
a
Absolutely.
story.
and people should write it down. You've got a story.
I've got a story. Yeah.
Everybody's got a story, and even if it's only for your family,
Exactly.
because you know, once we fall off the perch, that story's gone.
Yeah.
You know, like Dad volunteered for the Second World War. Didn't have to go. He was 31. Didn't have to go. He
So
was,
was my
Yeah.
grandfather.
Oh, okay.
He was young like that and he volunteered
yeah,
too.
yeah. And
So-
I can remember we were up in the redoubt in Tauranga having fish and chips for lunch, and Mum was crying. I was like,
Aw.
"What's she crying for? We're having fish and chips for lunch." but Dad had told her apparently that he'd volunteered, and luckily
Yeah.
he spent 4 years away and he came back. But he'd never
So,
talk
it's
about
a
the war,
long
right?
time
It is a
away.
Yeah, it's a long, like I was 3 when he went away, and
Yeah.
7 years
She
old.
never
Who's
came
this?
back
Who's
in
this
that
man
4
with the
years.
hat on kissing my mother?
What you're saying is exactly what my dad said
Yeah.
about his father, because my dad
Yeah.
was 5 when
Yeah.
his dad came home.
That's a
Yeah.
long
He said exactly
time.
what you said. He
It's-
didn't
it's-
know
it's
who
a year-
this.
no, I didn't know who
who
he
this
was.
man
No,
was.
no.
Yeah.
How did you think that affected you? I've only asking
Yeah.
because of my dad.
Yeah, no, well,
Do you remember it?
I remember it. Well, I remember
Yeah,
it well. I
but
can,
it's
I
Because
still
can,
that's like 80 years ago,
Well,
dear.
it's a long time. I can remember it's more
Like
than
my
I can remember it because when he came home, I couldn't recognise him. But of course,
Yeah.
settled in,
Yeah.
and Dad was a gentleman and a gentleman,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and he'd never talk about the war. He told us some of the funny things odd times, like when he was a military policeman, motorbike gets stuck in the creek and stuff like that, and. We found a diary of his after he died, and
Wow.
man, some of the stuff in that, you think, shit, when he told us that story, it must have been traumatic.
Oh man.
Just one little sentence, you know, spent the night in the foxhole all night, didn't think we were going to see the morning.
Wow.
Yeah, that's horrible.
Yeah.
So everybody's got a story, eh?
Exactly.
And they should be written down because if it's only for the family even, it's important because
It is.
once the person's gone, the story's gone.
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
Dad and his brother and 3 sisters came out from England to Australia initially. He must have been about 19. I think the father, his mum died in childbirth, and his father remarried, and I think the wicked stepmother basically chucked all the kids out.
Oh.
And it must have been a pretty traumatic time because that's another thing Dad never talked about. Never talked about his home life
Oh, mate.
back in Scarborough where he was born. Never ever got in touch with anybody. His eldest sister went back and sort of made peace, but so you wonder, that must have been pretty traumatic too,
Oh,
because
totally.
he never talked. He talked about some of the funny things like running after the milk cart, and it used to be steam powered and getting burnt by the embers that dropped on the road. That's about all he talked
Well,
about.
that generation didn't talk.
No. And yet
No, they
his
don't.
father won the Military Cross in France in the First World War. Dad would have been 8 or 10. Dad was born in 2008, so Dad would have only been 6 or 7 years old. He came home.
2008.
I know what he means.
Well, 1908. I
Yeah,
think.
that's the one.
Everybody's got a story in here. It was
They
never
have.
talked about when we were growing up, you know, which is
Yeah.
sad in a way, because it's part of your family history, eh?
It's
But,
nice to leave something behind for your children.
yeah,
Other
yeah.
people. I actually thought about leaving all my CDs behind at my funeral so everyone could pay for the jolly things and pay for my funeral. So we'll be waiting for this book. Have you got any other plans apart from the house?
Well, I've got a
House-
little hot rod I'm building that's
Oh.
nearly legal. So I'm down to 2 cars.
Yeah.
It's nearly legal, and that'll be my fine weather car because it hasn't got a
Yeah.
roof. This is my wet weather car. What's the world coming to? What's the world coming to? People kill in the name of their Lord. Makes you wonder, should you believe in God? What's the world coming to? What's the world coming to? Like those never-ending waves rolling in, seems there's never-ending war and sin. I'd like to do something, but what can one man do? We all felt the same, peace will come through. You feel so helpless, makes you wanna cry. All we can do is try, 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 try. What's the world coming to? Got a message what the world should do. Make love, make music, don't make war. Surely that's not what we're here for. I'd like to do something, but what can one man do? We all felt the same, peace would come through. You feel so helpless, makes you wanna cry. All we can do is try, 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 try. What's the world coming to? Got a message what the world should do. Make love, make music, don't make war. Surely that's not what we're here for. Make love, make music, but don't make war. Surely that's not what we're here for.